So now, Kate, we need to launch the movie review poll, and let's see how everyone here viewed the movie. You'll choose one of these descriptions. Just click on your choice and submit.
We have 7 people who have not answered yet.
I'm not sure how to make it come out. I did the chat. I typed it in. How do I make my choice?
The poll window should pop up in the middle of your screen.
No, it just says movie review poll, and I see the little boxes, but I can't click on them.
Mhm.
The poll ended.
I never saw it.
Okay, let's share the results. Well, it looks like Out of the Box and Onto the Road got 29%, and Message of Feminist Disruption got 29. So those were the top 2 choices. We had then 19% agreed that it's the most subversive blockbuster of the 21st century. And we have 14% that said very pretty, but not very deep. And a superhero movie even better than Superman, 5%. So thank you all. Let's close that poll. Well, let's see.
Yeah, 5% was one person because only 21 people voted.
Right. So now let's move to the next poll. We wanted to know who you went to see the movie with. Was it with a female friend? Was it with family, with your spouse or partner, with younger girl or boy, or with male friends? So now the poll window should pop up in the middle of the screen.
My option is not available. I saw the movie alone.
Yeah, I think if you're on the phone, you won't get the poll.
Either that or it might be so small you can't
Well, somebody just said they went alone, which, yeah, that you didn't even give that choice. So that there's people that went alone. Yeah. So
Well, that's
I don't know
true.
why that's not in the poll.
You know, that's true.
Hmm.
I went by myself as well.
Yeah.
We knew we weren't going to catch
Well,
everybody.
we were curious about kind of the conversations, you know, that were generated afterwards. There was a survey done that said 53% of men felt that they had increased their understanding of the patriarchy and the impact on women. Let's see. Are we ready? We've got 17 who voted. So it looks like the most frequent choice is with female friends, and then with family members, and then with your spouse or partner. Okay. So let's stop sharing that. And we have some discussion questions next. For this, you will need to use the reaction raising, let's see, you'll need to raise your hand, and on the phone it may not be a separate thing, it might be under reactions, but if all else fails you can do like this. But try and do the raising of the yellow hand. Now our first question, beginning at the beginning of the movie, what did you think about the film's beginning, that opening sequence? Did you have a reaction? I see well, I saw Ellen's hand go up. And then we'll go to Maura. Ellen, please unmute yourself.
Okay, whoa, where'd you go? Oh my
There
gosh.
you are.
Uh, I lost you.
Well, we're seeing you. Go ahead.
Really? Oh, well, I love the beginning. It was really impressive. But I had read that it had relationship with other movies. So, and I actually did see 2001. So I thought it was very impressive and very clever.
Okay, I saw Maura. Let's see. I think it was. Well, let's go to Sylvia Martin. Please unmute yourself.
I thought that it was interesting that they compared it to, before Barbie and after Barbie, and that there was going to be a change in the world when Barbie came, when the new doll came. And in a lot of ways there was, especially with young girls. Some very negative, some maybe positive, but we've talked about body image problems related to Barbie for a long time, for many years. That's the first thing that came to my mind, but it definitely was a change because she came out.
Okay, thanks. Cindy, vote.
Yeah, hi. I agree very much with what Sylvia just said. And also, it was certainly a very attention-getting opening, the way that they did it and kind of set the stage for the change that was coming.
Right.
Right. Okay. Murray.
I disagreed with the beginning because I didn't have just baby dolls. I had little girl dolls. I had Shirley Temple doll, and I thought that it was misleading.
So you didn't think that dolls before Barbie were designed to represent a baby and
No,
encourage?
some
Okay.
were, obviously, but there were
Not all.
a whole bunch when I was growing up that I had that were not babies.
All right. Let's see. Do we have anybody else? I'm not seeing a hand, so
Sylvia Martin, did you speak?
she did. Sylvia, you can lower your hand. There you go. I was kind of affected by how violent the reaction was toward the baby dolls in that opening sequence. It certainly made an impression, but I wondered whether it was necessary to go to such extremes. Anybody else have that reaction? Ellen's shaking her head. Paula's
Yeah.
waving.
I want to say yes. I was surprised at the anger, and I think that represented the anger at being forced into a position of subservience and servitude. But it was so entertaining. That was the overall impression. The music was so humongously effective, and I really didn't think too philosophically, other than, wow, there's something to that. Thank you.
Right. It did have that beginning of an era, beginning of time kind of feeling, which was on purpose, obviously. Very effective, and the throwback to Space Odyssey 2001. All right, next question. What was,
Elaine, we have Kathleen Shea had raised her hand.
okay, Kathleen?
Just wanted to say that when Mattel Toy or Hasbro launches a new toy product, they want to literally kill any other product competition that comes along. So for me, organizationally, corporately, that was a product launch, and letting everybody know that this was the old doll was gone. This is a new doll, and that's it. That's Mattel or Hasbro.
Mm-hmm. You could be right. It's a new doll and a new world, and you need to get rid of the old. Okay, next question was, what was your reaction to Barbie's comment, I would never wear heels if my feet were shaped like this? Nancy, we're hearing a radio or something.
You're hearing my bulldog. He's sitting on my lap.
Oh, okay. Did you want to answer that, or do you need?
I had my hand up for the first question you asked.
Okay.
And I thought that it was symbolic of smashing the role that to be a woman, you had to be a mother. And that it also was such a change with the baby dolls, and then she was like a sex goddess, and the feet thing, actually wearing heels really is kind of a control thing, versus men wearing their loafers or their whatever shoes that are flat. I think sometimes it puts you at a disadvantage, especially if you have a job where you go out in the field. It's very impressive to be wearing heels.
Well, if you're running away from danger, it kind of makes you helpless.
Well, you can use it as a weapon, but I'm just saying that I thought that was very impactful.
Right. Okay. Maura, your hand's up again.
I worked in downtown Chicago and I wore 2-inch heels and I got plantar fascia so bad that I never wore heels again.
Right. And those weren't as high as Barbie's.
No, they weren't.
Let's see. Anybody else? Raise your hand.
My hand's up. I don't
Oh,
know.
Ellen.
Yeah, I want to say I thought it was very interesting the issue with the shoes when they showed the high heel shoes, the pretty pink ones, and then in comparison, they were the god awfulest looking flat shoes you've ever seen. I mean, they were Clarks with huge buckles. I mean, you know, you would have worn them in a country road. You know, it was like such a juxtaposition. I mean, they didn't go halfway on that. And I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. When Weird Barbie gave her the choices. Paula? Unmute yourself. Paula, we're not hearing you.
Okay. So as a lobbyist in Springfield, all the women wore heels. And I discovered lots of times as a lobbyist, you have to find the votes. There's a committee going on, or the legislation is going to be called on the floor, and there's legislators that aren't in their seats. So when that happens, you have to go find them before the vote is taken. Otherwise, you're going to lose their vote. So I discovered very early on that running was a lot easier in flats than in heels. And I managed much better on the job. There were still women lobbyists who wore heels all of their lives, but I have no idea how they got the votes there on time.
Right. And you were walking on marble floors.
Yes.
Okay, another question. What was your reaction to the comment, "No one rests until this doll is back in the box"? Just raise your hand.
Could you repeat the question? What?
No one rests until this doll is back in the box. This was Will Ferrell, the CEO of Mattel, when Barbie was in the real world and she went to headquarters. Nancy Hutchins.
I think it has to do with control and fear of change. And if she's back in the box, she's contained and she's not free and doesn't have free will.
Right.
And I also think it's interesting that Will Ferrell is in this movie based on some of the other movies that he's been in. I thought that was very interesting.
Well, the movie pokes fun at Mattel from time to time, even though they were a co-sponsor, co-funder of the movie. So that
from what I gather, their sales are going blockbuster right now.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
But I also thought the character Rhea Perlman does at the end is based on the real founder of it and whose kids were named Ken and Barbie. I thought that was really interesting. I didn't realize that. I also didn't realize she was worth $100 million when she got out of the business.
Right. She invented Barbie, and she was Jewish, and there was evidently a German doll that was kind of like Barbie, but not exactly. And so she created something totally new here. Kathleen Shea, your hand is up.
Well, first of all, just to frame this a little bit, the dolls wanting to have a human life, but they don't know how to have a human life. And then human life, we want to live like dolls, but we don't know how to live like dolls because we've been played with too much and cannot express our feelings too well. And so when the patriarchy claims and says no one rests until the doll is back in that box, patriarchy is saying, hey, we can't tolerate this level of change in our society. So no one rests until the doll is back in the box. That's too much change for this society to handle. The patriarchy does not like it, represented by black suited Mattel patriarchs.
We can't hear you, Elaine.
The next question I had was reacting to Ruth's statement, the originator that we just talked about, who created the doll. She was talking with Barbie when they were having tea, I believe, and she said, humans only have one ending. Ideas live forever. What did you think about that statement? I wondered whether she was comparing herself in creating the idea of a Barbie to perhaps an ordinary human life ending in death. This Barbie idea is living on beyond her death. You remember that Will Ferrell's character said the ghost of Ruth lives on the 11th floor or something like that. So they claimed that her spirit was haunting the building. So something to think about, creating something like Barbie does live on beyond one person's life. Well, the next question I had was, what do you think the character of Weird Barbie added to the story? I see smiling, but I haven't seen a hand. Oh, Moira, is your hand up again? You need to unmute.
I really enjoyed Weird Barbie. Weird.
Well, and some of the reviews referred to her as the wise woman.
Sure.
She knew how to navigate between the two worlds. And when people had problems, Barbies, they would go to her. Did you enjoy how they described her?
I enjoyed her look. I liked what she had to say. It was fun.
Right.
They say that the Weird Barbie is going to be a very popular costume this year.
Ellen?
Yeah, I think she was one of the reasons that we were able to enjoy the movie, because it was done in such extremes, the splits and all of that. and the character, you just, you know, she suffered something, but she was indomitable, and that was so delightful. You know, it was just, you just, no matter what was thrown at her, she just seemed to thrive, and that was so fun to watch.
And they described her as a Barbie who had been played too hard. Kathy.
Yeah, a couple other things I thought in terms of the weird Barbie too, was about people who collect Barbies. So there's plenty of people that have Barbies that just are in a box on a shelf somewhere. And here is a Barbie who was completely loved, and she was seen as the odd one because she was loved so much and played with so much. So that was an interesting component. And then all of her colorfulness and different hairstyle and all of that also made me think about different populations, so like LGBTQ and others who don't necessarily fit with the common mode of what we're supposed to be like in society. So I felt like they did a number of different things by having the weird Barbie character.
Right. I see heads nodding. Let's see if we have anybody else's hand up. Kathleen, is your hand up again? Or is it up from the last question?
Yes, it is. Yeah, Kate McLennan, edgy Barbie, was authentic with her Birkenstocks. And the message was, we can outgrow being dolls and being human if we just laugh a little more at ourselves, laugh a little more at ourselves.
Right. And she also allowed or encouraged deviation. I mean, she was wearing those socks that I'm sure didn't come with the Barbie costuming. Okay, the next question I had was, what did you think about when Barbie was in the real world and she asked, do you mind if I go to the bathroom? Kathleen?
Oh, I haven't thought about that too much, but I just thought that was a way to deflect Mattel patriarchal board and get away from them. That's all I thought. As a deflection.
True. And did it amaze you that none of them thought about whether she was a doll and really could go to the bathroom?
Doubted it. No one doubted it. No one doubted it.
Kathy, you have your hand up.
I also thought that it was a knock at some traditional business environments where people feel like they don't have the ability to just do the things that come natural to them, and that they have to have permission, or they have to be constantly doing what their management and stuff says, as opposed to considering what they actually need.
Okay. And Nancy Hutchins?
I thought the question that she asked showed that she was submissive to them. She didn't ask, where is the bathroom? She said, do you mind if I go to the bathroom? And I think that's a whole different spin on what has actually happened, or where is the bathroom? I thought that just put her in a lower category. She wasn't equal.
Anyone else? Well, have you ever used that as a means of like escaping a bad date or a chance to make a call for help to somebody? You know, that excuse of I need to go to the bathroom, whether you ask permission or not, is kind of a feminine tool that we've used throughout our lives, I think. And she used it as a means to find an escape route because they were all there in a circle and she couldn't have easily escaped unless she left the room. Kathy, is your hand up again?
Yes, it is.
All
I
right.
think also for those of us who are introverted or otherwise get drained from being around too many people too long, that's another way to get away from the situation or get away from the number of people in a way that's not necessarily offensive to others. Like if you're going to use the restroom, it's not like saying, I'm sick of being around all of y'all. I need a break.
Right. Well, moving on to the next question. The movie said, Barbie has a great day every day, but Ken only has a great day if Barbie looks at him. What's your reaction? Mara, was that a shrug?
Yes, that was a shrug. I didn't understand that really.
Well, the way that Barbieland appeared, Ken was totally dependent on Barbie for his self-worth or attention.
Okay, until they got to the other area.
Right, right. Ellen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I thought it was a sexual statement. I thought, I mean, that's how I interpreted it, and I know it was pre genitalia, so it was. But that's that's how I saw it. Just like, so maybe I'm misplacing that, but that's what I thought.
Okay, Sylvia Martin.
Because I feel that it's sort of dealing with that whole business of males wanting a woman's gaze and feeling isolated or rejected if they don't get enough of it. And I think there's some men like that. They're not strong enough to have a relationship unless they're, they have a lot of attention. We could get into a really deep discussion about that and how, married couples have problems because of that.
Right. One of the reviews suggested that Barbie could have given him, one time he tried to kiss her.
Right.
And she kind of rejected that. It suggested that she could have given him a kiss, but then that's like a pity play. It's not a real relationship. She's just doing it because she feels bad for him and he expects it or thinks he needs that.
Right.
Somebody else had their hand up. I'm scanning. Barbara?
Yeah, thanks. I took it as role reversal because I think in the 50s and 60s, the women were at home and kind of like Donna Reed or whatever, they were all dressed up. And until their husband came home from work and paid attention to them or talked to them or ate their cooking or whatever, their life had no value. So I took it as that in Barbieland, there's this role reversal where it's the men who have no value.
Right. And the men also had very few power positions. It was an amazing place. Whoops, Nancy, you want to say something else?
Years ago, when I was working on one of my degrees, I took a class on assertive training for women. And I shared that information with my mom, who had been married to my dad for about 40 years at the time. And they went on a vacation together. And then they were coming back and they hit Chicago. And my dad said, well, you know, we got some frozen soup in the ice box. We could heat that up when we get back to St. Louis. My mother said, I'm going to Steak and Shake. And then they got closer to St. Louis. And he said, well, you know, we also have some ribs. And my mom said, I'm going to Steak and Shake. Then they got into St. Louis and they were like, 15 minutes from where they live. And he said, well, maybe we could have some spaghetti and meatballs because I know there's some spaghetti sauce. And my mom said, I'll drop you off at the house, but I'm going to Steak and Shake. He looked at her and he said, well, why didn't you say you wanted to go to Steak and Shake? And my mother said, I've been saying it for the last couple 100 miles. Then I get a phone call from my mom and said, I asserted myself and we went to Steak and Shake. And I laughed. And then I got a phone call the next day from my dad and said, like, what the hell are you telling my wife? And it was funny because it made a ripple in their relationship. But I thought that was kind of like the Barbie movie there.
Right.
There was change.
She stepped out of that box.
Yeah. And it kind of changed what was going on in their household. But they stayed together for 54 years and they were a happy couple. But it was, he started listening to some of the stuff that she was saying because I think he just didn't actually hear it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the next thing that I have is Sasha, the daughter of the Mattel designer. She says to Barbie, you've been making women feel bad about themselves since you were invented. What's your reaction to that? Just raise your hand. Some of you haven't talked. Now's your chance. Diane?
Well, if you're going to call on me, I will just mention that when my daughter was growing up as a child, I really resisted getting the Barbie doll. I did not like all the consumerism, and then you had to have the car and then 22 different outfits and just the whole
house.
Yeah, we had all of that. And the outfits, and then 6 different dolls that had the different outfits, and I was just horrified. But of course, grandma and other people and kept insisting that she needed to have them. And I think some girls that she played with had to have them. So again, why not have her have some? And the fact that Barbie always had to be in heels, and she said, her feet are deformed, Mom. Well, yeah, they don't look real. And I didn't like the fact that it really made a very bad body image. She was kind of a more muscular little girl and was never going to be this tall, slender thing. She was always short and much more muscular and athletic. And I think it really had a lot of negative things in the, with the self-esteem and all that. I just was not pleased with Barbie at all. And maybe I'm getting this wrong, but didn't Barbie one time have a voice, and some subversive people put Ken's voice in Barbie and vice versa? Or was it the G.I. Joe doll and they put the Barbie, soundtrack into a male macho kind of thing with, oh, okay, I want to go to the mall and shop, And and it was a pretty funny time that I don't know what would have happened if they found who did that, but there were some of these dolls that had the wrong soundtracks, which I thought was absolutely perfect.
It sounds like a good trick if you can manage that.
Yeah, and I think it had to be somebody on the inside who pulled that one off. Because again, the whole stereotype and bad body image and consumerism, I was just so turned off about all of that. But they had to have it.
And initially,
they got that too when it became an issue that everybody had them and you couldn't play if you didn't have one. It's like, okay, you'll have one. I think they're ugly. They cost too much, but you have one like everybody else.
Yeah. And the first Barbie was not at all diverse and didn't have a career. And,
right.
there were many issues at the beginning that they dealt with. Sylvia, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. I think if you have a strong self-image, you wouldn't have been affected that much. I'm old enough that I did not have Barbies. And my daughter, I don't think it was barely there, so we didn't have all those in the house. But I just, when I looked at her as a doll, I just thought she was unrealistic. And I'm such a realist that, I don't know if as a child I would have been that affected. I think it would have been fun, but I'm not sure that the body part would have bothered me, or I would have tried to emulate her in that way. But if a young girl has those issues, certainly I think that could be a problem if you have a child like that, and you suddenly see her not wanting to eat, wanting to lose weight when there's no necessity for her to lose weight, that kind of thing. Right. Then she's certainly being affected by the doll.
Right. Paula?
I had no desire to see the show. And my daughter said something, well, Mom, aren't you going to go see Barbie and Ken? I said, why the hell would I go to see that? Barbie didn't mean it. Jenny had some. The funnest thing I remember is her cousin was over and they were like 5 and 6. And when her cousin Ben left, all the Barbie dolls in her room had their heads cut off or torn off. I had no desire to see the show at all. And I agreed with Sasha totally. And then my daughter said, well, Mom, it's about feminists. And I said, well, hell, but I have to go. So I agree with Sasha totally.
You're muted, Elaine.
Nancy Hutchins.
I have a thing about names. So I looked up the meaning of Sasha. And it's a general gender neutral name. It can be either a boy's name or a girl's name. It means defender. Let me look. Something and keeper of mankind. It has a very impactful meaning in itself. And that little girl actually was a sample of that, because she's saying to her mom about the Barbie doll and the impact that it has. So I thought it was a clever name for her.
What do you think about her mother being named Gloria?
Well, as a blues fan, that was a song when we won the Stanley Cup. That song was played a lot. So as a St. Louis chick, it has an impactful meaning for me, which is probably atypical to the rest of the group.
Well, do we know any feminists who might be named Gloria?
Steinem, who just turned 89 years old and was on 60 Minutes this weekend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think their magazine celebrated their 50th anniversary.
Right.
Ms.
Kate?
I'd like to remind some of the more mature AUW members that AUW does have a history with Barbie. In 1992, Teen Talk Barbie was released by Mattel, and each doll contained a voice box that allowed the doll to say 4 random phrases out of 270 possible phrases. And one of the phrases that garnered attention was, "Math class is tough." Do anybody remember that one?
I remember this.
Yeah. AAUW criticized the use of that phrase in a report about how schools treat girls unfairly. And according to the New York Times, following the report's publication, Mattel removed the phrase from the toy's computer chip and offered to exchange any offending doll. And the Mattel's president at the time, Jill Barrard, said, "In hindsight, the phrase math class is tough, while correct for many students, both male and female, should not have been included." That's what Mattel's president wrote in a letter to Sharon Suster, president of AUW. "We didn't fully consider the potentially negative implications of this phrase, nor were we aware of the findings of your organization's report." And I remember that we had a meal at our AUW branch, and in the center of each table there was a Barbie doll. So Teen Talk Barbie is actually quite hard to find. I remember looking for it on eBay, and it's a real bonanza if you find one with the voice box. You know, it's a little unit in the back that works off batteries. It's still working. So look out for it and hope that you get one.
Kind of like when you have a misprint, those become more valuable afterwards.
Yeah.
If you found one with the original recordings.
Yeah. Well,
let's
it's nice. It's nice to remember that AAUW has had its moments with Barbie.
Right. Let's move on to Ken. What does he mean when he says, "I am Kenough"? He even had a sweatshirt that he wore in one of the scenes. And I think it was after he did one of those soul-searching ballads. I enjoyed the music as well as some of those dance numbers. Ken's ballad was "I'm Just Ken." And one of the phrases in there was, "Anywhere else, I'd be a 10. But he's stuck in Barbieland." Charmin?
I would say I have a tattoo on my inside my wrist that says "enough." That's my reminder. So I'm Charmin enough or whatever. I think it's just his realization that he's not going to be able to rely on Barbie for his happiness. He's going to have to find it himself, and he's enough. So it's what a lot of women have always had to, grapple with that. I have a friend who's a few years older than me, so she's 57 now. And when she was growing up, she got the message from her parents that if she wasn't married or didn't have a husband, that she wasn't a whole person. She wasn't. And so that's just in the last, few decades. And so I think about her all the time, and how she, would ask her husband for permission to do things. That was the way she was raised by her parents, that she wasn't enough. She had to have a man as well. My parents raised me completely opposite. But I think that's kind of a theme that runs through a lot of women. Maybe not so much in the newer generations, the younger women, as I think are getting away from that, but certainly my generation and older, where, like someone mentioned earlier, in the 50s and 60s, you were home, you had the dinner ready for your husband got home, and then hopefully he enjoyed the dinner, and all that, your whole life was kind of revolving around that husband. And so Ken's whole life revolved around Barbie. and Barbie making him have, he had a good day if Barbie looked at him. But so now realizing that he can have a good day on his own.
Right. Sylvia.
Yeah, I
Martin.
think it shows that he's developed some self-acceptance and can love himself, so to speak. Like she just said, doesn't have to rely on Barbie, knows he can't rely on Barbie. So a healthier perspective.
Right. Ken also said in the movie, after he had been to reality, he said to the other Kens, "You guys are not doing patriarchy very well." What did you think about that part of the movie? Sylvie? Oh,
I'm sorry.
did you have your hand up again, or you were
No,
just...
I forgot to put it down. I guess I will answer that. I think that we have to look at what Ken means by patriarchy. Is it the 50s patriarchy, as we've referenced, or is it present day? The modern, what I consider modern perspective. So, do we say, okay, his parents really brought him up to be self-accepting and so forth? And is that how he does patriarchy well? I don't know.
Well, you remember he went to the library and collected some books when they visited the real world. And so he studied he could see that men were in charge of everything. And then he learned more about it. And what happened in Barbieland after he said that? Kathleen? You're muted, Kathleen.
I think this is the knock on the door of fragile masculinity, and his final pathos is acknowledging that he is enough just to be Ken, but also being aware that the guys around him were not doing patriarchy very well, and that was confusing to him, and wondering what they're all going to do. If he's not doing patriarchy, who's going to do it? So, and then we have the entire, what I call withdrawal from Barbieland and the takeover of Barbieland, the hostile takeover of Barbieland, and kicking Barbie's clothes out and kicking all the, the rhinestones out and the shoes, etc., and putting in a lot of masculine things like punching bags and, Salvador, what's the guy's name? The boxer stuff. And then we get into the false fighting that men do to make us think that they're fighting, but they're not fighting, which was very well choreographed. It was absolutely wonderful. But there's a whole remarkable analysis of patriarchy here that, men have to do patriarchy very well, or else they get very criticized for it. But if they stay with a very beautiful woman, they don't have to do much. They can just be with her and get admired for being with a very beautiful woman. And so that's a real stuck place for men in terms of how much patriarchy that they need to do and how much they really need to have women on their arms to admire them and be admired by other men who admire men who have beautiful women on their arms. So this is a real confusing, fragile place in this movie, and it's a very revealing place in terms of, if men man up or do they human up. So, the whole thing of masculinity is vulnerable, and Ken is saying, can I man up or can we be human up? So this is a very poignant part of this film, a very sincere attempt to look at fragile masculinity.
Well, we are getting on in time, so let's do a broad question. What lessons for women did you take away from this movie? Or what lessons for men did you take away from this movie? Either way. Well, an easy one would be, don't let anyone put you in a box without your permission.
And Elaine, dovetailing what you just said, I was going to say that I recently participated on an interfaith panel discussion, and the coordinator of the program asked me if I could recommend a Catholic priest for this program, and I said yes, and I recommended a Roman Catholic woman priest, and I had like a little guilt thinking like, I hope the coordinator doesn't get pushback. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I just saw the Barbie movie and I don't need permission. These women priests are not recognized by the Vatican, but they have been in existence and ordained for like 20 years. I'm pretty sure the bishop who like ordained them was immediately excommunicated, I believe. But anyway, the point being, I went past that little, thought, and everything worked out beautifully, and she did a great job on the panel. And I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Kathleen Shea and Debbie DePalma for being here tonight, accepting my invitation.
Good.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Comments, lessons from the movie for either men or women? Tamara, are you there? You haven't said anything tonight. Just trying to
I'm
hear
here
from
enjoying the conversation. Thank you.
Marcia. How about you? Do you have any insights from the movie, lessons learned, takeaways?
Well, I was kind of excited about the movie when it started out the way it did. I was remembering my baby doll, probably the major doll of my childhood. By the time Barbie came out, I was well into high school. I just never paid much attention to Barbie other than thinking, what a weird shape. And I think so much has changed in all these years since, what is this, 65, probably almost, 65 years ago that Barbie came on the scene. And just the fact that groups like ours members are getting together and discussing this and having some really in-depth opinions about so many different facets of the movie. I'm also interested in this movie because the woman who wrote it and co-directed, Greta or that's her name,
Right.
right?
Greta Gerwig.
Yes.
She
She grew up
produced Little Women and Lady Bird.
and she grew up around the corner from where my sister lives in Sacramento, and she went to grade school with my nephew.
Wow.
And I'm going to be visiting them next week. I'm looking forward to having a discussion with some people in the neighborhood.
Interesting.
See what their reaction is to the way this young woman has skyrocketed in her career in the movies that she's been involved in, and certainly her role as both a writer and a director, I think is just pretty amazing. I would love to meet her, but I'm going to see what my 39-year-old nephew has to say about his former classmate.
That will be interesting. The movie has certainly broken box office numbers right and left. And I will be curious to see how this impacts and perhaps opens more doors for other women directors. They certainly cannot say that a movie directed by a woman will not be commercially successful.